Okay, so I think I'm live. The date is Saturday, November the 22nd. 2025 is the year, and it is, as far as I can count, the 62nd anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So I have been reading, or rather I should say I intended to be reading on a regular basis, which I failed at doing, Final Judgment, the book Final Judgment by Michael Collins Piper. Always I am filled with the best of intentions, but never seem to quite, follow through. But look, I'll tell you that maybe, I did put up, by the way, a couple of videos that I haven't put on YouTube, onto Odyssey and onto Rumble. And to be honest with you, I kind of felt that even though YouTube is seemingly a little less sensitive as far as banning things, I did feel like that maybe it was always a risk, and I didn't want to be banned by the 22nd of November. Maybe I'll use that as a partial excuse, that I wanted to be able to stream on the 22nd of November for the anniversary of John F. Kennedy's assassination. And I see Modus Operandi there give me the thumbs up, so that's really good to know that you can hear me and presumably clear enough and loud enough. So what I'm going to talk about here is Clay Shaw again, and I'm going to pretty much read off his Wikipedia entry here. That's a picture of him there. I think this picture shows his unusual features. I think he has a sort of unusual shape to his mouth, a sort of a bow lip there on top. I think he has unusual eyes, piercing eyes, and I think he's got a strong eye ridge brow, and I think maybe the most unusual feature, I think, I've seen it on some people, it must be a heritable or genetically inherited trait. Is it curly hair? Is it wavy hair? A thick, wiry hair? And I do wonder whether that's indicative of a certain admixture of a certain thing. His surname is Shaw, S-H-A-W. I've heard a lot of people being, or having the surname Shaw in Ireland. Is it an Irish name? Possibly. But I did look it up, and it also says that, I don't know what that name is, but it says it sounds similar to, and often is used as, an American or an anglicised or an Americanized version of a similar sounding Ash, Ken, Azzy, Wish name, right? And there have been some people that I've met or encountered throughout my life with the name Shaw that, looking back on, I do wonder, oh, were they actually a you-know-who? And so I just wonder about this fellow as well. By the way, maybe I'll say the word in case you don't know. It was only a few months ago that I think that I learned for the first time the word cyanim, maybe, S-A-Y-A-N-I-M. And it's a network of, you could think of it as like a sleeper cell, an ethno-religious sleeper cell of people, right? Maybe I'll say the full, 3-letter name a little bit further into this stream. I'm just always thinking that maybe as they're winding things up, I'm assuming the algorithm is listening more attentively in the beginning, right, to see what's this about. But I mean, anybody listening to me probably knows. And the conspiracy, I mean, the pretty much the takeaway from the book, The Final Judgment, or Final Judgment, the Final Judgment by Michael Collins Piper, is that it wasn't a mafioso hit. It wasn't a sort of a plot by the CIA, either exclusively or necessarily. Those two organizations may have had a hand in it, but the leading hand, the guiding hand, or the major partner in the venture, in the crime, was something that we all now have come to understand was also behind 9/11, was also behind the sinking of the USS Liberty, and was also behind many other things, in addition to the JFK assassination, and so many other historical things, perhaps even the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Was it Booth, the name of the fellow? Oh God, it's just, sometimes when you're live, your memory plays. It's just, it's like you go blank from hypnosis or something. But in any case, was he a member of that international cabal as well? And so, I'm speaking a bit delicately now, but I'm sure we might get onto it soon enough. But you know who I'm talking about. That it's always them, every single time. And I'm just wondering whether he was a member of this sort of, not necessarily international crime group as such, but associated with them as a sort of an implied asset, or an asset of a sleeper cell, that just because of your birth, of your heritage, of your religio-ethno heritage, that you might expect that at any moment during your life you may be so honoured as to receive the tap on the shoulder and to be told, we just need you to do us a favour here. And it might be as simple as acting as a go-between between certain parties who might have something to transmit to somebody else, or somebody might have some information that needs to be conveyed, or somebody needs you to do something, clean up after a crime, or facilitate a crime, or take some more active role in the crime. And from reading Wikipedia anyway, I don't know whether... Cyanime, or Cyanime, I better just say in case you didn't know, it is a network, formal or informal, of all pretty much members of this group, clan, whether they are religious or not, whether they feel they're God believers or not believers, or atheists or whatever, that they are people who can always be called on to be loyal enough to the state of thingy-majig, right over in the Middle East there, or more particularly loyal enough to the genetics, the group, the race, the ethnicity, the whatever exactly it is, the internationalists, just always loyal enough to be able to be called upon. So cyanime, whatever exactly it means, the group, the collective of people. So that's just what I'm guessing at here with this fella. But anyway, Clay Shaw is his name, and I'm just looking at it there, and I wonder whether any of you think that this fellow looks odd enough that he may not be one of us, that he might be one of they, as in they live, or he may be among us, but not really one of us. And there might be so many of these people that walk among us. And I often think of that Carpenter film. It's not They Live, but it's The Thing. Where whatever is peering out at you from behind those eyes is not really human in the way that you might expect, or that I might expect in my naivety, if you see what I mean. That other John Carpenter film, and I think that there has been more than 2 movies that he made that could be seen now with our eyes as we have them now to perceive things as being definite metaphors or allegorical stories to help you see better by metaphor, kind of thing. So I ask you, when you look at this fella's picture there, what really do you see there? Is that a man of European stock, or does he have features, including that sort of wavy, kinky hair, that is not quite there, something of the uncanny valley? So Clay Shaw is his name, and he was the only man to have been, according to Wiki, charged or saw the inside of a court for allegedly having something to do with the assassination of JFK on 22nd November 1963. So anyway, as I say, cheers to modus operandi for the heads up there, or the thumbs up, or I should say, and the salute. And salute to you too, throwing up ramens, and hello to Jack as well. Cheers to Jack there. Jack was telling me that I did, by the way, a stream. Sorry, not a stream, but I pre-recorded something earlier today and then just set it as an instant premiere. So it's kind of like sort of half going live in a way, you know. And he commented on that to say that he was out delivering parcels like Santa Claus early, you know. So I'm amazed. It must be very interesting to do that, and after you've done a full week's work, no doubt. So cheers anyway, Jack, and hopefully that you've finished whatever you have to do today, and you can relax a little bit, and maybe you'll be going live or doing some kind of a stream later today, and I'm just streaming through OBS. So that doesn't have a facility in it, for as far as I know anyway, for having voice calls in it. But I must figure out how to take a voice call separately and pipe it through OBS. But I don't have that facility pre-prepared right now anyway. Maybe for another time. I should say right now I'm streaming on YouTube as well as on Odyssey. Just in case YouTube would yank the stream, that at least in theory then it would continue on Odyssey. Not that I don't think this will be too laden with hot button words, if you know what I mean. I don't have to say that 3-letter word. So Jack says he'll do a live tomorrow. Okay, on Sunday. Maybe it'll be sort of at the roughly usual time. What would it be? I won't try and work it out now, but anyway, it's late enough for me, but probably early evening for him. Yeah, I'll get on with it here anyway. This is the Wikipedia page, and that's the picture of the possible perpetrator, the suspect, the culprit. Not exactly the culprit, but like Lee Harvey Oswald, he was connected with an asset of the CIA and possibly, I'll say it now, the Mossad. So I'll start from the beginning. It's not too long of a Wikipedia page, but it's all quite interesting, I think. So Clay Shaw. This article is about the New Orleans businessman, you know, the legitimate businessman. And there's apparently also a Florida politician called Clay Shaw. Anyway, there he is, looking like a 1930s, 1950s movie star with the cigarette in hand, pensive, looking into the middle distance. He looks much more dapper there, and strong chin on him and jaw and whatnot. So he looks handsome enough there. Anyway, born Clay LaVergne Shaw, and I wondered, what does LaVergne mean? Are there place names called LaVergne? I know there was a Shirley LaVergne, wasn't there, who was quite famous in, was it the 70s? Maybe on into the 80s, or maybe it was 60s too. Does LaVergne mean anything particular, or is it just a sort of fairly common name that you might get in Louisiana, some kind of Creole, or what's the other word, that kind of French influence type name? I don't know. Anyway, March 17th, he was born, 1913, indeed. That's kind of auspicious dates there and year. Kentwood, Louisiana, US. Died August 15th, 1974, aged 61, in New Orleans, Louisiana. And it does mention his death here. I'll leave it till the end anyway. Interesting death. He died relatively young, at 61. And maybe it might have been. I mean, he smoked. Maybe it was to do with the effects of smoking. But anyway, education: Warren Easton High School. Occupations: businessman and director of the International Trade Mart in New Orleans. And I did as I said, not exactly stream, but a whatchamacallit on YouTube, a premiere. Where I talked about his connections to this international so-called trade organization called Permindex, standing for Permanent Industrial Exhibition, and then linked to what they called in Rome the World Trade Center in Rome. With very... I don't know whether that directly then led on, because they had offices then in New York. I don't know whether that directly led on then. They said it closed in 62. Did it lead then to the opening of the 1968 World Trade Center in New York? I haven't confirmed that, but it might be. So in this way anyway, even if it's not, just the phrase World Trade Center, or Center for World Trade, and the JFK, this guy kind of links the two of them. He was asked by these Roman or Italian businessmen and politicians to please, because of his amazing business acumen or business connections within the US, or in that, I forget what the region they called it, but some region from Texas to Louisiana, that economic region, because he was so well known then there, and with such business connections. That's the ostensible reasons for it. And when they invited him, pleaded with him to come over and visit them, and would he join the illustrious group of lawyers, politicians and businessmen in Rome to be a member of their board, and he wouldn't be asked to do much. So maybe they just wanted him for his connections, if indeed that was the legitimate part of it, just business connections. So Clay Shaw there. So more on that, even though it might be a little bit sort of, how would you say, pedestrian, humdrum. I don't want to say boring, but I think as a foundation for things, it needed to be laid out for the record. So if you're interested, Perm Index there, earlier on in the video, you'll find it in my videos on YouTube, and I'll re-upload it then to YouTube and Odyssey later. So he did have a military career in the US Army from 41 to 46. Okay, so during the United States involvement anyway in World War II, he achieved the rank of major, which, again, I think to ascend that high, you kind of need to be somebody of that clan already anyway, That's the impression that I get. They don't just make anybody a major. You kind of have to be already anointed by birth and be a member of their cabal anyway. So when I see something like that, again, I see it as another data point as to maybe Shaw is indeed not exactly an Irish name, but an Americanization of a similar sounding name as I saw in Wikipedia, and in can look up what does his surname mean type thing, as I say, of an Ashkenazi sounding name is what it says. Whatever that is exactly, I didn't see it there. Anyway, he was an American businessman, military officer, and part-time contact of the Domestic Contact Service, the DCS of the CIA. So, I mean, there it is. It's not even hidden. It's supposed to be sort of like, that is what you'd literally call hidden in plain sight, where the CIA keeps people like him close to them so they can say, we'd like you to act as somebody who intercedes on our behalf between somebody and somebody else we'd like to talk to. That guy has invented something. That guy is a member of that business. That guy owns that business. We want in on it, or we want them to do something for us. Go and talk to them for us and put the feelers out, at the very least, and report back to us. Even something like that. It sounds quite innocent as well, doesn't it? But I mean, it depends as well on how you turn up, and how you who you turn up with, and how persistent you are, and the methods by which you contact people. And it can be unnerving as well. People can sense there might be this security services or CIA behind them, but they don't actually overtly have to say that, and it can be all implied, and secret handshakes and certain signs and nod and a wink, and people might kind of get the sort of heebie-jeebies about somebody just turning up on their doorstep, you know what I mean? Even men in black suits, that sort of stuff. I'm imagining the way things might go, in a little bit of my imagination, and perhaps also a bit of the way that things are portrayed in movies that are sometimes quite real depictions of actual events. Anyway, I better just check back here with the chat, and I see Ed Poe there. He's very well informed. He says, didn't he call himself Clay Bertrand as well? And yeah, he did. And he says crypto names, absolutely, with all the sort of connotations that crypto names might mean there. Yeah, so he did. Although apparently, either in court, or did I read on this page, or did I read it in the Clay Shaw files there of the LaVergne, a blog by a fellow called LaVergne. Somebody there I read where they sort of said, oh no, that's nonsense, that's just a silly conspiracy theory, that he apparently, look, I don't know if he was gay or not, but maybe, like, you could say, if we want to really give him the benefit of the doubt, that he just had to go to known gay bars or whatever as part of some CIA exercise or investigation, who knows, right? But it is said, anyway, and maybe we'll see it in this Wikipedia page, that he used that name as an alias or a cover name or whatever, right, when he went to these clubs. But, as I say, officialdom, anyway, in whatever way, said, no, it's just crazy conspiracy theory. It's a hallucination of the far right or whatever, didn't say far right, but you know what I mean. So, but you're spot on there. Clay Bertrand, whether they deny it or not, is a name associated with Clay Shaw, for sure. And maybe it was pronounced Bertrand or something like that. If it is that kind of French New Orleans type name, maybe Bertrand is a common type of name. I know there was some, I think it's fairly common name in France and maybe French, Canadian, Quebec type place as well. Anyway, good eye there, Ed Poe. And yeah, it's brilliant to have people listening who, are well informed. Because as I say, I don't remember being familiar with Clay Shaw, the name, at all. But I never really took much interest in the whole JFK thing. I just did figure, well, I guess he shot him, and there's bad people in the world who sometimes don't like leaders for whatever political reasons, and they go mad and they just shoot them, and it's just a lone wolf thing. And some people in the world, well, enough millions of people in the world, are just crazy, and they go crazy for no reason at all. Ed Poe says his attorneys used the "he's persecuting my client because of his lifestyle" excuse in court. Right, okay, his lifestyle. These euphemisms. And it's crazy, even these days they have to use euphemisms for their lifestyle. Anyway, I'll read on. Shaw is best known for being the only person brought to trial for involvement in the 1963 assassination of John F. Kennedy, due to an investigation led by Jim Garrison, the district attorney of New Orleans. The jury ultimately acquitted Shaw after less than an hour's deliberation in 1969, so very quick. Though some conspiracy theorists continue to speculate on his possible involvement, I'd like to know who they are and what are the nature of those conspiracy theorists, but there's no footnote number there that I could read further on that. But if anybody else does know what exactly people speculate, I'd love to know. This Wikipedia page doesn't seem to get into those details. So there he is, a very unusual looking fella, I would say. So that's Shaw in 1951 on his Brazilian immigration card. So, I mean, that's another feature. These people had parents, perhaps, who travelled around the world, relocated several times, and then, for whatever reason, that or otherwise, they have several passports on the go. Always not just dual nationals, but several nationals. Anyway, Shaw, a native of Kentwood, Louisiana, was the son of Glarus Lenora Shaw, a United States Marshal. I thought at first that was a woman's name, Glarus, but it's not. That's his father's name. United States World War II draft registration cards, 1942 family search, shows Clay's father's full name as Glarus Lenora Shaw. So definitely sounds like a female name, Lenora, but whatever. Okay, what do I know? And Alice Shaw was his mother. What's the thing on that? James Rosemary Ward, Law, Jack, Plot or Politics, the Garrison case and its cast. Okay, apparently comes from that book. His grandfather, it says anyway, had been the sheriff of Tangipahoa. Maybe I'm not pronouncing that right. Tangipahoa Parish. When, if anybody's familiar with that, let me know. When Shaw was 5, his family moved to New Orleans, where he eventually attended Warren Easton High School. I wonder why they moved. After graduating from high school in 1928, Shaw was hired by Western Union as a manager of a local office in New Orleans. Now look, I know we like to think that people, boomers, and he would be maybe silent or greatest generation. I know we like to think that previous generations had things much easier. They could just graduate from high school and then walk in off the street into any business and be hired, and they go, I like the cut of that 18 or 19-year-old man's jib. Hire him as a manager, Smithers. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen these days. Even if you have just done a degree or a master's or whatever in business studies or business management, whatever, nobody says we want to hire that guy in as a new manager. Like, you have to do at least a few months just doing whatever ordinary job before you get a promotion. So even then, I mean, what do you think? I don't think it's plausible that you would finish high school, you're 18, 19, whatever, and you just apply for a job in Western Union and they go, good, you could be a manager of a local office there in New Orleans. Do you think that's likely? I don't. I think you have to be anointed already, you know? Wobbly Boost there says, I only do silly, crazy conspiracy theories now. All the serious, sane ones keep coming true. Yeah, takes all the fun out of theorizing. Greetings, Wobbly Beast. I like it. I like that. I think you might have a similar sense of humor to myself. It sounds very Douglas Adamsy as well, you know. I can imagine reading a paragraph like that. You know, the guy who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, you know. He only looks into the crazy conspiracy detective mysteries, because all the sane ones are just too boring and too true. Takes all the fun out of it. So I like that. Edgar Poe says, I know, right? Wobbly Boost. Lenora. Adaptation for Leonard. Lenore. Or Eleonora for a girl. Yeah, that's... I could believe that, but that was his father's middle name. But look, maybe it might have been the style at the time to name boys' middle name after an aunt or something like that. Who knows? Anyway, appreciate your comments there. So this is what we're expected to believe anyway. But maybe people would tell me, no, of course, things were different then. In 1935, Western Union transferred him to New York City, where he became a district manager. So they hired him immediately out of school. You can be a local manager in 1928. And then 7 years later, okay, I suppose he was at it for 7 years, they said, you can be a district manager if you wouldn't mind going to New York City. And of course, nobody would have minded then in 1935, because it wouldn't have been anything like the dystopian hellhole that it is now, no matter how dangerous it might have been, or no matter how much crime there might have been then. It would have been easy peasy lemon squeezing compared to now, wouldn't it? Anyway, while in New York, Shaw, who wanted to pursue a career as a writer, attended Columbia University. Oh, did he now? As I learned, I'll just tell you from James Shelby Downard and Michael Hoffman, Columbia is the Masonic Twilight language equivalent of the Phoenix. Columbia is the Phoenix rising from the ashes. And it is the university in New York where most, if not all, of the professors with their culture of critique, or not culture of critique, what do I want to say? Cultural Marxism from Frankfurt University, when they had to flee in the 1930s from Germany because there was a new National Socialist Party that didn't want these subversive types acting as corrosion to their society. These cultural Marxists, they fled Germany and they arrived in New York, got off the boat and went to Columbia University. So it has been since the 1930s a breeding ground for exactly the same kind of people and the same kind of ideas. And you might think, well, I mean, just because these people came over with the ideas, what harm could ideas do? But they set about proliferating them and inculcating people with those ideas and establishing a sort of a reputation of institutions behind them, and then going on radio shows and writing newspaper articles about how we're all the same and there should be equality amongst men and everybody should be entitled to this and there shouldn't be any reason why a woman shouldn't do that or a black man shouldn't do this and all this sort of stuff, which people, when you initially hear it, it all sounds like a great idea and you think, yeah, exactly. And then, they say, and we all have equal potential. It means that then, therefore, if we don't meet the same potential, if we don't achieve the same potential, somebody must be holding us back. So there must be something unfair fundamentally about society. So we need to start dismantling the systems of society that are holding people back and all this sort of stuff. And eventually you arrive at DEI and everything else now, affirmative action and all the other stuff. And I'm struggling to remember the fella's name. It's unusual now. I think his name was Boas. I think it was Franz Boas was one of these people who I learned from reading recently over the last year or so, a book called Which Way, Western Man by William Gailey Simpson. He documented all of this, including these people. And this fella, Franz Boas, he was according to Columbia University anyway, a professor of anthropology. And he measured skulls of different races. And he said that it was nonsense. He was one of these people who supposedly debunked measuring skulls and phrenology, and that there could be any correlation between the size or shape of anybody's skull and the amount of brain that could fit in there, or the not just the shape of the brain, but the constituent components of the brain, such as frontal lobes and the size of the prefrontal cortex and this kind of stuff. He said all of that is junk science, he said, because he said if you strip away the skin, just the outer veneer of the human or the humanoid, what is left beneath is exactly the same. All the skulls measure the same. I've done it with whatever measuring implements, as vernier calipers or whatnot. And he said it's all exactly the same. The interior cavity is just the same. In other words, just like sort of Merchant of Venice, if you cut us, do we not bleed? We're all the same underneath. Our blood is all red, regardless. And it's just superficial differences on the skin color tone or whatever. But that wasn't true. And not only is it not true of the skulls of different races, but the average, skull interior volume and shape and size, it's not the same on average. But not only that, but the very skulls that he claimed to have measured were retrieved from wherever he had them in his lab, or maybe he locked them away or even buried them. Put them in a tomb or crypt or mausoleum or whatever, and maybe not mausoleum, but he could have been forgiven if maybe the skulls that he had happened to be sort of anomalous and just were the same size, even though they're from different people from different races. No, the very skulls he had were in fact differently sized and shaped. And so he knew that he was lying about this, but he, through this university and everything else, of course, all the people who own the media and everything else, they would get these people on and they go, right, so professor from Columbia University then has debunked it. Thank you. Has debunked that there's any difference between races. So that's what I learned about the Frankfurt School, going to Columbia University in New York, and one of the people of the cultural Marxist movement being Franz Boas, I'm pretty sure his name was. And that's what I learned from reading the book called Which Way, Western Man, in one of the chapters, long chapters, maybe it was chapter 19 towards the end, by William Gailey Simpson. So I know there was a bit of a deviation there, but while it occurred to me anyway. So if he was hanging around with those types, it's another data point where I think this guy, Shaw, he wouldn't be wanting to pursue a career as a writer in, of all places, Columbia University, basically as a propagandist, for that kind of corrosive, societally corrosive type of writing, if he wasn't already a member of that ilk, if you see what I'm saying. Right, I'll check back here to see if there's any comments. In reverse order, Shenanigans, good name. He says, it's not a gang, it's a social club. Yes. What name would you give the social club? Wobbly Boost says, yeah, jumping spiders alone destroyed more brain equals more thinking for scientists in the last 5 years. When you say jumping spiders, I think I know what you mean. Like the people with spiders on their heads, is that it? The tarantula heads. I was thinking of weaving spiders, but maybe you're thinking of tarantulas on their head. Edgar Poe says to Shenanigans, it's been my feeling for a long time that Garrison was a limited hangout. Gatekeeper, I see. And again, I really don't know much about Jim Garrison, but I always got the impression that everybody thought that he was a solid fellow and an honest man. Big Jim was solid, meaning tall and strong, but unmovable and full of integrity and evenly weighted, sort of thing. But I mean, who knows? I don't know. But that's just, I suppose, maybe what the normie take is. So he says, much like John Kerry's role in the Senate subcommittee hearings. Right. Yes, definitely. In the, I forget the name of it now, but yeah, that committee that looked in, the Warren Commission, isn't it? Is that what you're thinking of? John Kerry was on that, wasn't he? And there was somebody else that went on to become president? Was that Gerald Ford? Anyway, maybe I'm confusing certain things here. Let me know in the comments if I am. But in any case, yeah, the Warren Commission, like the commission to look into the 9/11, it was all just, set up to find nothing and move on, and then they'll reward these people later on with well-paid jobs, or prestigious jobs, and or well-paid prestigious jobs. Is there anything else there that I missed? Douglas Adams, Spike Milligan, yes, says Wobbly Boost, and Rodney Roode. Does that ring a bell? I'm not sure if I know Rodney Roode. All part culpable for my sense of humor. Oh, really? Okay. Oh, very good. So yeah. Okay, they've been influences on you, and yeah, Spike Milligan was a bit before my time. Like maybe just sort of, if I had, people who are sort of 5 years older than me, like older brother type guys, they would have been more into people like that. The Goons, or was it, yeah, the Goons, not Goonies, but the Goons, or the Goon Show, sort of a precursor to Monty Python. I think Spike Milligan did hang around with Monty Python a lot. Spike Milligan, I think, was Tears of a Clown sort of a fella. I think he was very depressed and I think manic, to try and hide his sadness about. Didn't he see a lot of his colleagues lose their lives in was it World War One, or could it have been even was it World War Two, or could it have even been World War One? I can't remember now. But anyway, Garrison says shenanigans. Garrison on Johnny Carson came up on my feed directly after your earlier live today. Okay, very interesting. I'm glad it did. Garrison throwing suspicious three-sided hand signs at the end of the interview. Very sus. Right. Okay, I must see if I can find that video and go have a look at it. Ed Poe says, these figures, meaning Clay Shaw and others, always seem to have dubious backstories, replete with credulity-stretching serendipities. I love that. That's a great sentence there. Replete with credulity-stretching serendipities. I love it. When you hear a word and you start hearing it or seeing it a lot, and you wonder, is this a strange phenomenon whereby now, just because I learned a word, it's suddenly cropping up everywhere, or I'm only noticing it because I now know the word, but I was somehow blind to it when I didn't know the word? Or it could be a phenomenon. That's called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, whereby after you learn of an event or a thing or a phenomenon, you just see it everywhere. It's kind of like a corollary to the every problem looks like a nail if you've only got a hammer as a tool sort of a thing. Now, I know the Bader-Meinhof incident was a terrorist incident, but there's something about that incident whereby somebody decided to name it after that. If you've never heard of it, once you learn of it, then you see references to it everywhere. And I learned of I guess it's a Yiddish word, but it's used a lot in, it could be New York American, or maybe all Americans might use it in their parlance, and no doubt through the sort of, Jewish or Yiddish influenced movies. But the word is kismet. And I see it as very like serendipity or sliding doors or destiny type of thing. And it came up in a little short that I did, or actually I'll tell you what it was. It was a clip I took of a live stream about how JFK's father, the sort of Kennedy patriarch, was apparently coming back from did it specify somewhere in Europe anyway, and arriving by ship in New York. But on this ship, as they're crossing the Atlantic, he must have complained to the captain, or to somebody to complain to the captain, that these, what do they call them, Orthodox or maybe Hasidic Jews, were practicing some kind of ritual on Rosh Hashanah, and disturbing apparently the first class passengers or the people on deck in general, or giving them the heebie-jeebies or something like this. And he complained, and so they put a curse on him, and the word kismet was used. And as I say, I think it's packed with meaning akin to, but maybe it doesn't directly translate as serendipity, and maybe not as destiny, because it's not a nice thing necessarily either, but some kind of, some sort of ugly fate that they can't avoid, maybe as well. But anyway, it just made me think of it there when you were saying replete with credulity stretching serendipities. I love that sentence structure anyway. Dubious backstories, so absolutely right. And Jack says Hitchhiker's Guide is one of his favourite books. It's great. Well, that's brilliant to know, Jack, because I think a lot of Americans, that might have skipped people by. It was written by, as I say, Douglas Adams, who I think was a friend of people like Stephen Fry. I think Stephen Fry knew him. And I think we might have gone to the same university. So they had the same kind of maybe similar influence of a sense of humour as maybe, Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie, who were a little bit like maybe a more modern day type of Eric Idle and John Cleese pairing or something like that, or Monty Python type people. Same kind of English humour, which sometimes doesn't translate across to American. And they did make a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie, and I thought it was pretty good actually. It was in the works for many years, and they did make the BBC in the 80s did make a TV series, and it was pretty good. I did like it. I haven't seen it in a long time. I wonder, has it held up? The special effects would look extremely dated. It would be quite comical, but it might be sort of endearing in a way. So yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and as I say, I really appreciate it as well. I must read it sometime. Just the intro to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy first. Sorry, to the book called Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, about an electric monk who is created like artificial intelligence inside a robot to just go off and believe whatever, right? So human beings don't have to be bothered with it all. And it's comedy dressed, or it's high philosophy dressed as comedy. And I think it works really well that way. And it certainly really got me to think about a lot of stuff. So you might be receptive to it if you've never heard of it or never read it. And I've been meaning to, it's one of the many things, so many things I've been meaning to do a stream on or a video on, but never quite get around to doing. But I'll definitely have to bring it up to, near the top of my to-do list. So I'm very glad to know, Jack, that not only that you've read it, but it's one of your favourite books. So Wobbly Boost says, and I'm now catching up on some new comments while I was reading. He says, lol, Swillianism called it, or S. Williams called it the Rosy Cross Dinner Club. Oh, I see. Yeah, the Rosy Cross, the Rosicrucians, okay. To a Freemason, asking him why he's filming the building. Oh, right. Now, was I talking to you, Wobbly Boost, about this guy, or did I mention this guy? Because he only came up, suggested to me in my feed recently, and I've watched a couple, maybe 2, maybe 3 at most of his videos, and they're very good. And he's got a nice little sort of droll, sarcastic sense of humour on him. So I don't know if that's just coincidence, a bit of kismet, a bit of, what did you say it was? Serendipitous, credulity stretching serendipity, right? But look, there it is. There's an example of that. So the Rosy Cross Dinner Club, to a Freemason asking him why he's filming the building. I think I did see that one. amazing. Or maybe I did share it and you saw it from that. Rodney Rood, says Wobbly Boost, rarely toured internationally. Australian comedian. I see. Okay. Maybe you're Australian. Okay. Ed Poe says, the US Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Subcommittee on Terrorism, Narcotics and International Operations, Iran-Contra, CIA drug dealing, etc. I see. That Senate hearing, or Senate committee hearing. Right. Appreciate it. Wobbly Boo says, I'm stealing that phrase. Yeah, credulity stretching serendipities. Very good. Love it. Jack says, or he's linked to a video on YouTube. Garrison on Carson. Really appreciate it there. I won't click it just now, but I'll come back to look at it later. Wobbly Boost says, was hilarious when a couple of the most popular got busted as agents. One of the tip-offs was him referring to his own life as my backstory. My backstory. My narrative. my fictional backstory. Anyway, or my popular backstory. Especially popular flat earthers. Sorry, I messed all that up. Okay, well, I think I got the general gist of it. I got a recommendation a few days after I last spoke with you. Subbed straight away, S. Williams M. I think is what it is. S. Williams M. So that is just a coincidence, because I think now I might have shared it as a post, but it doesn't matter. It might have been sent to your feed, same as mine. You know the way sometimes YouTube just says, this video, we're going to send it out, as a recommended in most people's feeds. So, okay, well, good. You don't have to dox yourself any more than that. You live in Australia. That's good enough. Appreciate it, Wobbly Boost. I'll continue reading with this anyhow. And it's great to have a few of you here listening live as I go through this. So, anyway, I did the deviation there about Columbia University, in case anybody didn't know, but it's sort of fairly fresh in my mind that is the fact of the matter. So he later left Western Union to pursue, this is Clay Shaw, he later left Western Union to pursue a career in public relations. Indeed, which is the spinning of facts, the massaging of truth, the gradually twisting of truth until it's whatever you want it to be. Eventually accepting a position with Kedick Lecture Bureau. All capitalised there. K-E-E-D-I-C-K, Lecture Bureau. There's a note on that. Will I just hover over it for a second? Came out in the Jim Garrison investigation anyway. JFK Online, jfk-online.com. So Shaw enlisted in the United States Army upon the American entry into World War II and was assigned to the Medical Corps as a private. Oh. Would you need to have some background in medical practice to be assigned to the Medical Corps? I wonder. Does anybody know? You would think so, wouldn't you? He later received an officer's commission and was posted to England, where he served briefly in a hospital unit. He was transferred to the Quartermaster Corps and served as secretary to the General Staff in England. Well, that sounds like a cushy job, doesn't it? And again, I doubt you can promote it to secretary to the General Staff in England. It sounds like a job that's far away from landing on beaches in Normandy, doesn't it? If you're secretary to the General Staff in England. So I think nice cushy jobs like that don't just get given out to the general goy, Yeah, and is anybody familiar with the Quartermaster Corps? It sounds again like a prestigious part of the army. Anyway, served as secretary to the General Staff in England, and after the Normandy invasion, served in France and Belgium. He was decorated by 3 nations. And these type of people, if he is one of those people, they love to award prizes to themselves, don't they? Plaudits and laurels and everything else. So look, I mean, you can see that I'm looking for any reason to be suspicious of him, to assume the worst. I'll try not to do that in the interest of objectivity. I'll just read out what It says here, he was decorated by 3 nations, the United States with the Legion of Merit. And you'll see that kind of motif there, I think, is on all these. Maybe it's not coincidence by any means. This kind of, I'm sure there's a name for that. What is that structure there? It's not a triangle, because it's got, say, one. If it was a triangle, it has one side of the triangle, the shorter end of it pushed inwards. Is it a chevron? Something along those lines, anyway. But maybe it's meant to evoke something like the tip of a spear going into a rose or the center of the emblem there. And you can see at the center there. If you look at the stars, they sort of make an upturned shaped triangle and a downturned shaped triangle. Put them all together, and what do you have? You have all those stars go to make a larger star. A sort of a, what is it called? Is it a 6-pointed star or a hexagonal star? And how many stars are there total there? Is it 4 and 4 is 8 and 5 is 13? Isn't that right? I think so. So yeah, it's, again, I think that's maybe an example of something hiding in plain sight, because I don't know if you're like me, but it's just, I'm hovering it over there as well in the center there, those 13 stars. It's the kind of thing that you don't immediately see, but it is that star of that certain country, when you put them all together like that in the Middle East. It really is. So he was awarded the Legion of Merit from the United States and the Bronze Star by France. Look, I'll go into it here, just show you the Bronze Star by France. Now that's a 5-pointed star. And he was decorated, and with the Croix de Guerre, so just the Star of War, or the War Star. So they are with, again, so similar, but now it is triangles, like spears going into the center, without the bottom or the shorter edge pushed in, and then the 2 swords crossed there. And can't quite read that. I can't make it any bigger anyway. On the center there, I can't quite make it. Maybe it just says Republique. No, it doesn't say Republique, but it looks like something along the lines of Française. So that's what I'm thinking. It's something like Guerlique Française, or maybe, anyway, doesn't matter. Going back here anyway. And the Chevalier de l'Ordre du Mérite, so a Knight of the Order of Merit, by Belgium. And so there you have that kind of motif again, same as in the American one, with 6 arrowheads pointing in. And is it called a chevron, where they take the bottom and push that in as well, the bottom one? Looks very like a lot of those sort of Knights of Malta type emblems as well. So it definitely looks like one of those secret societies. What do you reckon? Emblems. So by the Knight of the Order of the Crown of Belgium. Shaw was honourably discharged from the United States Army as a major in 1946. So it all sounds totally above board. After the war is good and done, and you've done all the tidying up afterwards, and being as a secretary to the people at the American staff in England, then you can wrap it up and come home then, after you've tidied up all your affairs a year afterwards, after Victory in Europe Day, I suppose. I'll just check back with the comments here. O'Donica says sigil. Right, is that what it's called? A sigil when you do that? Okay, appreciate it. Wobbly Boost said, and by the way, good to see you there, O'Donica. I know that for a long time you were publishing clips or full episodes or that kind of thing of Anthony Cumia, and I really appreciated them. I don't think it's an algorithm thing. I think maybe you haven't been doing so much of that lately, but I appreciated all the work that you did with that. I know a lot of people did, so it's quite an honour to see you commenting there, even if it was just the one word sigil, in a stream of mine. Wobbly Boost says, you'll see the 5 chevrons on hospitals and ambulances. Right, yes. We see these signs and symbols everywhere, right? But I'll speak for myself, but I think it's a common thing. You just don't really notice them, or you're not fully conscious of what you're looking at, or when you're looking at it, or where you've seen things, or why things look familiar. Wobbly Boost says, 6 chevrons for the Knights of Malta medal. Yes, that's what I was thinking of. Edgar Poe says the star configuration could represent something more esoteric than the one we're all thinking of. Military regalia has always drawn from the occult, yes. And Odonica says, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Odonica. Okay, on with this. After World War II, Shaw helped start the International Trade Mart in New Orleans, which facilitated the sales of both domestic and imported goods. He was known locally for his efforts to preserve buildings in New Orleans' historic French Quarter. Okay, sounds very laudable. Shaw was also a published playwright. The best known of his works, Submerged, from 1929. And there's a note on that, I'll just hover over it. It says Cotman, H. Stewart, Shaw, LaVergne, October 23rd, 1929. Wise, Claude Merton. Okay, so maybe there's something of interest, but they'll have to wait until another time. There's nothing linking to that play. It was co-written with H. Stewart Cotman. Again, my tuning fork ears when I hear a word like that, especially with man at the end. Really? It might be. When both were still high school students. All right, well, very precocious if they're writing plays that become known at all while they were still in school. Was he just that brilliant? I don't know. Shaw represented the United States on the board of directors for Permindex. And I was reading it, and I can't really help reading it as Permindex, but it's not an index. It's 3 letters pushed together like portmanteau. Permanent Industrial Exhibition is what it stands for. A Swiss trade organisation, but as I read out earlier in the, what do they call it, live premiere that I uploaded to YouTube earlier today, something had moved immediately from Switzerland to Rome, or from Basel, I think, in Switzerland to Rome. So it's not accurate to call it a Swiss trade organisation, international trade organisation, ostensibly, or they made it seem at least as if it was coming out of Rome, or headquartered in Rome, I should say. On 9th of May 1961, Shaw introduced Charles Cabell, or Cabell, Cabell, Deputy Director of the CIA, at a Foreign Policy Association event in New Orleans, as you do. He was just connected to the CIA, as we read earlier there. Arrest and trial. New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison, and there is a main article on this, the trial of Clay Shaw, but I'll just leave it to this article for now anyway. And look, even though I meant to do a lot of these in the run-up to the 22nd of November, I do intend to just continue with this until I finish reading Final Judgment by Michael Collins Piper, and go into whatever other little tangential areas of interest there are, such as Clay Shaw along the way. Hopefully, for the next few weeks anyway, leading up to Christmas. New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison prosecuted Shaw on the charge that he and a group of activists, including David Ferrie, Ferrie, and Guy Bannister, Banister, were involved in a conspiracy with elements of the CIA and the Mafia, and not just the Italian Mafia. In fact, much more than just the Italian Mafia. The international Mafia, and not out of Rome either. In the John F. Kennedy assassination, Garrison had Shaw arrested on March 1st, 1967. By the time of Shaw's arrest, Bannister and Ferrie were both deceased, but Garrison believed Shaw was the man named Clay Bertrand, as indeed, wasn't it Edgar or Ed Poe did say already. I'll just hover over it here, or maybe I'll have to go into it, because I've got it super zoomed in just so that it will be legible, when it streams as a video. So Clay Bertrand is an alleged alias associated with with two people connected to various investigations regarding the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. New Orleans attorney Dean Andrews Jr. testified to the Warren Commission in June 1964 that he received a call from Clay Bertrand, in inverted commas, the day after the assassination of Kennedy, asking him to fly to Dallas to represent the suspected assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald. The FBI had reported that 2 weeks after the assassination, Andrews, who had been hospitalized with pneumonia, said he was under heavy sedation and had concluded that the call had been a figment of his imagination, you know. So maybe he'd been threatened in the meantime to have a memory lapse or rethink what he thought that he had heard. Because maybe your man thought he was too clever and decided to use somebody else's alias to make the call, you know. Or maybe they're just not that imaginative, or they think they're sending messages. People get lazy as well, you know, and reuse aliases and cross-contaminate the sort of crime they're doing, or the thread of a crime. Or maybe they feel compelled to leave clues, as the devil does, you know, just to make everything all nice and interesting and convoluted. Maybe I'll just finish reading this little aside here. Nearly 3 years later, on March 2nd, 1967, the New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison asserted that Clay Bertrand, in inverted commas, was actually New Orleans businessman Clay Shaw, who had conspired with Lee Harvey Oswald and David Ferry to kill Kennedy. Shaw, and by the way, I don't think he thought, and I don't think, and maybe none of you do think either, that they just suddenly decided between themselves to do it, if indeed they actually did have a part in it or directly did it themselves. Shaw, who had been arrested and booked with conspiracy to commit murder, denied that he had ever used the name. An FBI document to President Lyndon B. Johnson's advisor, W. Marvin Watson, at the time of this development indicated that they had been unable to locate an individual by the name Clay Bertrand. Shortly after appearing before the Orleans Parish Grand Jury, Andrews stated in an interview on June 28, 1967, that Bertrand was not Shaw, but was Eugene Davis, his friend and client. But I mean, it still all leads back to him anyway, doesn't it? Davis denied in an affidavit that he was Bertrand, or the person who suggested that Andrews go to Dallas to help Oswald. Andrews was subsequently convicted on 3 counts of perjury for lying to the grand jury on August 14, 1967. On February 25th, 1969, Andrews testified during the trial of Clay Shaw that the name Clay Bertrand was a figment of his imagination, and that he had been carrying on a farce in order to prevent bringing a lot of heat and trouble to someone who didn't deserve it. Now, I'll pause there for a second just to say that, do you remember the fella, and I'm trying to think of his full name, but surname was something like Zimmer, or Zimmerman, who in the recent assassination, let's just say for the sake of argument that he was assassinated or killed or murdered or whatever, of Charlie Kirk. That, you know, I'm not sure if I've seen exactly a proper unedited full video of it, but immediately, or as near as immediately after he was shot, this fellow, Zimmer, who was also a witness at the Boston bombing and a witness, appeared on a documentary to do with the 9/11 Twin Towers collapse, or whatever we call it. He was on a documentary of that as well. And I think he might have even been at the Las Vegas shooting. Whatever his name is, Zimmer. And he is, yes, he's one of them. He's definitely a member of the tribe. And I think he could be said to be a Sayanim, a member of the sort of international people who is not just a crisis actor. And indeed, I think he did train as... Oh, I think he might have been at Sandy Hook as well. I think he might have been. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong about that. But in any case, he's got an entry on IMDb. And anyway, this reminds me of people like that who muddy the waters. They plant and seed a lot of information that's crazy and goes nowhere. They act erratically, and they say a lot of things, and then they retract a lot of things. acting as a sort of a red flag to a bull, a distraction, meanwhile giving the real perpetrators enough time and distance to move elsewhere, away from the scene. And meanwhile, then there's a lot of people chasing down a hoodoo there, right? To take that line out of Creedence Clearwater Revival song. To go chasing off jack-o'-lanterns, I think, as you'd maybe say, will-o'-the-wisps, not jack-o'-lanterns, will-o'-the-wisps, sort of bright sparks of things that go nowhere. I think that this must be something that they do as part of standard operating procedure to sort of create, what do they call it, FUD, isn't it? Fear, uncertainty and doubt in a lot of stuff. And then when it all goes nowhere, people's energy has been exhausted, maybe, and they're going to go, oh, listen, whoever did it is probably dead now, let's just forget about the whole thing, maybe, you know. Anyway, on March 1st, 1969, the 34-day trial concluded when the jury acquitted Shaw after deliberating less than an hour, which, as I say, seems mighty short time. It was like they had their minds made up a long time before the trial finished, or they'd finished hearing evidence, perhaps, you know, which, again, doesn't generally go to show that these people were all operating with best intentions. So that's Clay Bertrand, the pseudonym used by more than one person. And maybe it was not just to protect their identities, but, as I say, maybe it doesn't sound like an original theory or too outlandish, certainly, to say that it might have been used to sow an element of confusion, a MacGuffin, a lead that goes nowhere kind of thing. So Clay Bertrand, who was identified in the Warren Commission report as having asked attorney Dean Andrews via telephone to represent the accused presidential assassination, Lee Harvey Oswald. Garrison also claimed Shaw used the alias of Clay Bertrand in New Orleans gay society. Not happy society, but homosexual lifestyle. I'll pause there and just check the comments there again. There's Ulysses of Eru, also very pleased and honoured to have him in my stream chat there. And you know, in case you haven't seen any of his channels or many of his posts, I don't know how he does it. He does at least a post, I'd say, every day, and at least a video every day. And you know, most of it is to do with the decline of the Western civilization as it pertains to Ireland. But it applies everywhere, and I think a lot of Americans would be interested in it. So give him a follow if you're not already. And he has a huge amount of people, not just actually, it's more that he has so much people engaging, commenting, viewing, and liking his stuff. Like, I would say, like, what's probably one of the best ratios is, like, say, if he, I don't actually know how many subscribers he has, but maybe, supposing if he's got 5,000 subscribers, right? He's probably got all those 5,000 looking and commenting on his videos every day, you know. So that's a real testament to somebody who is not paying for subscribers, not bought it. They're authentic and you know, genuinely got a following, you know. So something I must have said along the way, which I'm not sure what it was about press X to doubt, but maybe it was to do with the aliases and this guy saying, maybe it was to do with like, oh, I was suffering from a fever at the time, which is why I thought that I heard Bertrand, but didn't, and I retracted now. So Wobbly Blue says, repeat witness. Yeah. And he's got a t-shirt that says, I was a witness at every major crisis event in the last 20 years, and all I got was this t-shirt. All right, yeah, exactly, yeah. I might have been wrong by saying that he was at Sandy Hook. I'm thinking of the guy who claimed that he took the children in and he protected them and blah blah blah, you know, and they told him there's a shooting down at the old school or whatever, you know. But whatever his name was, is something like Zim or Zimmer or something like that. This fella who got up and shouted something like, it was me, or whatever it was like that, at Charlie Kirk's assassination. I'm pretty sure I read that he was involved in a documentary to do with 9/11, like that he appeared as somebody giving testimony about what he saw that day, excuse me, and also was in the vicinity of the bomb blast of the Boston bombing. which, again, would stretch credulity, right, of serendipity and all that, wouldn't it? Anyway, I think I'm not sure how far we are through this, but it's not too long of an article. I'll continue with this. During the trial, which took place in January and February 1969, Garrison called insurance salesman Perry Russo. And I'm thinking of Jack Ruby there. Russo is, I think, in lots of languages, Italian, maybe Nordic languages, Russian, it means red. So when I see a surname like that, I'm always thinking, okay, did they come from some kind of red Russian type of faction? Are they a clan from that side of the family? I don't know. But anyway, Garrison called insurance salesman Perry Russo as his main witness. Oh, let's just go into his article here just to see if there's an early life on him. Although I did hear, maybe you did hear as well, that they are excising or removing early life. There's no early life section there. No, okay, so you know what I was searching for there, but so it doesn't matter. I'll go back anyway. You just have to wonder about it. So he called that guy, Perry Russo, a salesman, as his main witness. Russo testified that he had attended a party at the apartment of anti-Castro activist David Ferry. And by the way, let's not go into it, but people who are anti-Castro were likely a member of a cabal who just didn't like Castro because he wasn't good for business, or as good for business, with the casinos and gambling and maybe alcohol and drugs. What was his name? I can't think of his first name. Something like Fulmengi Batista, who was the previous president and then dictator in the 50s, as far as I remember. Before then, another revolution. And by the way, I read recently enough, I'm pretty sure the year that Batista came to power by the first revolution was 1933. It's always the way, isn't it? So anyway, the next revolution in Cuba then was when Castro came to power. And so it must have been that the you-know-whos had a good working relationship with Batista in Cuba, and there maybe was like a sort of duty-free or duty-free island offshore, kind of Florida or the southern coast of America, United States. So southeast coast, I should say. So, it's not just if he was anti-Castro that must mean, oh, were they good people? No. So anyway, but he testified that he had attended a party at the apartment of anti-Castro activist David Ferry. At the party, Russo said that Lee Harvey Oswald, who Russo said was introduced to him as Leon Oswald. And by the way, I mean, it does seem to be, I mean, when I first learned this, I'm going to segue into 9/11 now, that Osama bin Laden was actually employed by the CIA, had a badge and everything, I think, was on the payroll, and was sort of listed as an employee under the name of Tim Osman. I think it's Osman. So Oswald, like Tim Osman, Leon Oswald. I think there's more than just a sort of a, slight familiarity or ring there. Again, I think maybe these people just aren't that inventive, and they're just kind of go, what do we call the last guy? Oswald. Okay, we'll call this guy Osman. Yeah, Tim Osman. Yeah, sounds good. Maybe somebody can confirm that, but it does seem to be a matter of fact now, and everyone's like, yeah, well, so what? Just move on. 9/11 happened. It was years ago. And so what if Osama bin Laden, the guy who America went fighting and looking for in Iraq and Kuwait and Afghanistan and everywhere else, so what if he was really Tim Osman working for the CIA? It's just, this whole thing is preposterous. Everything is just a story. It's a stupid movie we're living through. Anyway, who Russo said was introduced to him as Leon Oswald. Ferry and Clem Bertrand, whom, again in air quotes kind of thing, whom Russo identified in the courtroom as Shaw, had discussed assassinating Kennedy at this party. And I wonder if that was in the Storyville section of New Orleans, as Michael Hoffman and James Shelby Downard did mention in their King Killed 33 and other writings, I should say, books and writings and things like that. Which reminds me, I did find, I think William Grimstad. There's three guys who are very interested in the sort of subterranean, chthonic, as they say, underworld underpinnings of all this in sort of demonic, satanic, coincidental, funny place name type way, and signs and symbols that they looked into the whole JFK thing from. And I did find some audio from William Grimstad, which is very good. And I uploaded it to Rumble, I think Odyssey as well. I don't think I uploaded it to YouTube, so I must do that. Anyway, moving on here. The conversation purportedly included plans for the triangulation of Crossfire and alibis for the participants. Yeah, exactly. Because even if Oswald did take a shot from the bookstore, repository, library, whatever, he didn't act alone, for sure. And in any assassination, especially like that, out in the open, it wouldn't make sense for them just to rely on one guy. It was all of them shooting at once. It was like one of those crazy Inspector Clouseau things where everyone's shooting at once and probably getting all assassinating each other in a crossfire. It was all of them. It was everyone you could think of. It was all of them, including LBJ. And it's not just a case of who done it, who didn't do it, who wasn't present at the time. I think a few people say they don't remember where they were when JFK was shot, but I think it is established fairly well that George H.W. Bush was there, and I think Nixon was there. But recently, we seem to be looking back over history and saying that Nixon was fairly based. Like certainly he knew who was who when it came to the who's, when it came to the you-know-who's, and was taping them and talking about them. And we can listen now through the magic of YouTube to what he was saying about them. But doesn't mean he was a good guy either. But anyway, last thing I'll say is, and maybe I'll find this picture later and repost it. I've used it in a couple of my videos that there's a wonderful picture of LBJ in an elevator in a hotel. I'm not sure if we know what the hotel was. And he's talking to, whispering basically almost in the ear of Nixon. Richard Nixon, LBJ is. And LBJ looks significantly taller and more menacing. And like the more senior figure for sure, as he was at the time. And he's pretty much, it's so clear that he's pretty much whispering secrets to Nixon. And Nixon looks white as a sheet, even though it's in black and white. And I imagine, and I don't think it stretches the bounds of credulity now, I imagine that he is saying, by tomorrow, as a lot of people claim that he was saying, by tomorrow, JFK will no longer be a problem for me. And the you-know-who's, we're with them now, and they're going to take care of him. And he won't be a problem for me, and that Kennedy family won't be a problem for me anymore. And you can see Nixon is kind of going, and the amazing thing about it is he's in an elevator, and there's mirrors on every wall of the elevator. So you can see them from pretty much a 360 degree viewing angle. You can see them in the mirrors and a sort of a infinity of reflections in the mirrors. It's a brilliant photograph. I'll post it again later as a community post. Critics of Garrison argue that his own records indicate Russo's story evolved substantially over time, undermining Russo's creditability. I think maybe they mean to say credibility. A key source was the Sciambra memo, which recorded Assistant DA Andrew Sciambra's first interview with Russo. The memo does not mention an assassination party and states that Russo met with Shaw on 2 occasions, neither of which occurred at the party. I don't know if they're referring to that there was Texas oil businessmen and industrialists and things like that who met with political figures on the night before. I forget the details now. On the night before JFK's assassination in Dallas. On February 25th, 1969, Andrews, and I think, by the way, I better say that LBJ's secretary was at this dinner with the oil people and politicians, and I think it was she who said that she heard them discussing that a certain figure would no longer be a problem for them, or that they were going to get specifically JFK the next day. On February 25th, 1969, Andrews testified during Shaw's trial that the name Clay Bertrand was a figment of his imagination, as we read there already. On March 1st, 1969, the 34-day trial concluded when the jury, as we've read, acquitted Shaw after deliberating less than an hour. Shaw denied any part of a conspiracy and said of the slain president, "I was a great admirer of Kennedy. I thought he had given the nation a new turn after the rather drab Eisenhower years. I felt he was vitally concerned about social issues," which concerned me also. Now that sounds very smarmy, especially, as I say, if you think back to the Columbia University there and all the progressivism, as we know it now, the cultural Marxism that came out of there. That's the kind of social issues he was concerned with. You know, what these days we know as DEI and AA, affirmative action, and ESG, environmental, social governance, right? All these lovely sounding things, but that are corrosive to our society. So I may be, of course, reading too much into very bland language here, but I don't think so. And I also think that he's killing him with kindness or damning him with faint praise here, you know. Oh, I was a great admirer. I thought he'd given the nation a new turn after the rather drab Eisenhower years. I felt he was vitally concerned about social issues, which concerned me also. I thought he had youth, imagination, style, and elan. All in all, I considered him a splendid president. I mean, I know people talked a bit more, what sounds like archaic. I don't think these days we'd ever, I hear sometimes people saying something is horrid. So it sounds very old-fashioned to me, like very Victorian English. But even if people do say that these days, I don't think people say splendid. Oh, splendid. Did they really, even in the 1960s, say, I considered him a splendid president? It sounds a bit fake to me, does it to you? I'll pause there for a second just before going on to his death. Wobbly Boost says there's multiple people who were named as witnesses in all the big psyops. Did I read that already? Yeah. And Edpo says, yeah, that guy is the Forrest Gump of tragedies. Okay, so the death of Clay Shaw. He died at the age of 61 at his home on August 15th, 1974. He was, so they attributed to, cigarette smoking. He was a heavy cigarette smoker for most of his life, and the cause of his death was listed as metastatic lung cancer, or metastatic lung cancer. He was buried in Woodland Cemetery in Kentwood, Louisiana. There's a picture of lung cancer, or metastatic. Well, I'm glad the picture didn't come up. And 33. Again, just a coincidence that, you know, he died of, they say, metastatic lung cancer, aged 61, but that the footnote just happens to be 33. You couldn't plan that. But anyway, what I would say there is that it wasn't at the church committee hearings that they talked about a gun which fired pellets of ice or something similar to that, that would leave no trace of puncture wound, or maybe there'd be a mild one or something like this, but that it would there'd be no bullet to retrieve, and it would be, maybe there'd be some laceration, but it would look as if the person died of a heart attack. And who knows, maybe his death was hastened to tie up a loose end in some way, that with some technology. You just wouldn't know. Anyway, at the time, and they say, he died of lung cancer because he was a smoker. Simple as, case closed, no need to look into it any further. So it says, at the time of his death, Shaw was engaged in a $5 million lawsuit against Garrison and members of an organisation, Truth and Consequences Incorporated, that had financed Garrison's investigation. And I put it into a video that I did. Was it written or written about Michael Hoffman? Michael Hoffman's writings on King Kill 33. And as I say, James Shelby Downard's, that in their investigations into the whole thing in a very unusual way, highly unusual way, right? It's an understatement to say unusual, in that they would say, for example, take the 33rd line of parallel, like the 33rd line of latitude, and trace it across the United States. And like, if you do follow it, like, you will see that there is, as Jack well knows, he's very familiar with this, and I didn't realize at the time, but the southern border, I think he says, of Arkansas is exactly the line of latitude 33 degrees north. But if you trace your way along this, I can't remember what state it's in. I don't think it's Arkansas, but anyway, some state there. Maybe it's Georgia. Maybe there's more than one. There is a town called Mason. Not too surprising. But Dallas itself is pretty close. I mean, it's not exactly on the line, but it's thereabouts on the 33-degree line. And there are other very interesting place names, and Truth and Consequences, I'm pretty sure, is a name of a town in New Mexico, I believe. And also, I think Roswell, New Mexico, is on the 33rd degree line. And in Arizona, Phoenix is pretty much on the 33rd degree line as well, as far as I remember. I think it makes sense that it is. And there's others. If you go and trace along, there's other unusual place names. And I think there might be a name could it be in, I can't remember what state it's in, but I think there might be a town called Longview. And so as you go west, you might have a long view, and you kind of go, well, you keep going, and eventually you come back up again. You get reborn in the crucible of the American Southwest in Phoenix. It's just, and so these guys would look into these things, and as I say, anyway, to have an organization called Truth and Consequences Incorporated. Now, whether that company existed before they named the town, or the town existed and they named the company after it, as I say, people like James Shelby Downard and Michael Hoffman and William N. Is it Grimstad? Yeah. These guys, they pore over everything with a magnifying glass and a compass, and they sort of say, yeah, we'll sort of reverse engineer this crime. And the calling cards are everywhere, and you always the 33 and the unusual names. So just point that out to you there anyway. Truth and Consequences. Bizarre name for a town, but it is a name of a town, and then they named their company, incorporated, to sort of be the name that will bring the truth out, or there'll be consequences. And I think we are, as a not just as a society, not just the USA, but as the Western world, we are feeling the consequences. We are paying the consequences. The consequences are upon us because the truth hasn't come out. And so I think it's upon us to, even if we all know that it's the same people who do it every single time, it's up to us to not just speak the truth, but to continue to speak it, and to uphold it, and to keep it alive, and to continuously rebroadcast it as far as we can, even if you've only got a small reach. You just keep doing it, in the hope to set things right. Once and for all, maybe just play our part. So anyway, I nearly said to set things right that once went wrong, like Quantum Leap. If only we could go back in time and fix everything. There was a JFK episode in that as well, if you know Quantum Leap, that episode. I used to really like that series, but anyway. So that had financed Garrison's investigation, Truth and Consequences. As Shaw, a lifelong bachelor, he was dead now, had no heirs or surviving relatives, maybe because of his lifestyle, who might stand to benefit from the lawsuit. The United States Supreme Court dismissed the suit in 1978. Because even if he wins against the Garrison's Truth and Consequences Incorporated, even if he won, who would the money go to? Who would be paid? Nobody. So what's the point? So the court case or the action died with him. Later disclosures in 1979, Richard Helms, and that made me think of Jade Helm. Is there any connection between Jade Helm? But let's not go down that road. Okay, we'll keep that for another day. Maybe I'll just pause there and just see if there's any comments before I move on. Edgar Poe, or sorry, I don't know what to say, Edgar, but Ed Poe says we should bring back Splendid. Yeah, why not? Lisa Hauserman, good to see you, Lisa. Wow, it's been quite a while. She says, I'm going to back this up to the beginning. Don't faint here. I am on YouTube watching one of your videos, lol. I'll catch up with you later. Yeah, well, it's a surprise to see, but a pleasant surprise. And I won't faint. Good to know that you're still alive, and alive and well, I hope. So I'm nearing the end of this anyhow right now. And Wobbly Boo says 33 and a third, 33.3. 33 and a third, as they say in Ireland, exactly. And all of us Irish people have to avoid saying it, if we can, because for whatever reason, it's a tongue twister for Irish people. Is it not for anybody else? Do you not sometimes kind of go, 33 and a third, 33 and a third. Okay, so 1979, Richard Helms, former director of the CIA, testified under oath that Shaw had been a part-time contact of the Domestic Contact Service, DCS, of the CIA, where Shaw volunteered information from his travels abroad, mostly to Latin America. Isn't that nice of him? What was he doing down there? You know, you can imagine him coming, me, as a man with a New Orleans lifestyle, who sometimes used the alias when perusing Bertrand in Latin America, with all these vulnerable people, impoverished, willing to do anything for a little bit of money. Now, maybe it wasn't that, but look, that's what we think of with all this trafficking, don't we? But whatever. He did so from, and we don't always just think of that, but like we often think of girls and women, but maybe there was boys too. Anyway, he did so from 1948 till at least 1956. Shaw was one of, and look, of course there was drugs and whatever else as well. Shaw was one of approximately 150,000 Americans, including businessmen and journalists, who had provided such information to the DCS, just a reminder there, the Domestic Contact Service of the CIA. So they say it right up front, you know. Shaw, and by the way, maybe I'll just say that, who is it? Max Blumenthal, I think it is, of the Grey Zone, I think has been to Iran more than once, but he talked about how maybe I think in the last year he went to Iran to interview somebody. Was it a president, former president, or some politician or ambassador or whatever there? And on his way back, he was interrogated. He was asked to, you know, please would you come this way? Even though he was with his family, I think, for an interrogation. So it wouldn't necessarily mean maybe that you were working in a friendly capacity with them, but I'm not saying that was the way with Clay Shaw here. Maybe it was much more of a friendly and formal arrangement with them. But anyway. So yeah, they wanted to interview Max Blumenthal. What exactly was the nature of his business and what did he talk about with the people in Iran there on his way back into the USA? I wonder, is Max Blumenthal one of the good ones? Is there such a thing as one of the good ones? But anyway, he's been a net positive, I would say, overall so far anyway. And the Grey Zone too. And Aaron Maté seems to be in the same organisation. Again, good too. Or doing good work at least. Anyhow, so he had been one of approximately 150,000 Americans. And I would say that's a number then you kind of go, that's a huge amount in the Seanim, you know, connected to not just the CIA, but let's just say it, the Mossad. Because as I think his name is Michael Kiriakou, they say, an ex-CIA, he's all over social media on X and on YouTube and talks to Syrian Girl a lot. He says that his impression was, and it didn't seem to be his uniquely, that that the CIA, he said, verbatim, I'm quoting now, I think it's pretty much an exact quote, he felt that the CIA was always Mossad's bitch. That's what he said. Anyway, like as somebody asked him in a space on an X space, on the platform X, asked him who did he feel was the driving force or the leading group or the organization that had the upper hand or was the more dominant, and something question like that, and he just came right out and said it. I think the CIA was always Mossad's bitch. They might have worked together in a sort of that might have been the official line. Oh, they worked together, they collaborated, but it was really just the Mossad walked around like they owned the place, even though strictly speaking, after he said that they weren't allowed in there. They weren't allowed in the CIA offices, but they just did whatever they liked. They went wherever they wanted, and that's the way it's been for decades. So anyway, this 150,000 Americans, I would say, are Sayanim, I'm guessing. Unofficial members of the tribe who, when asked, will do whatever, give any information, offer any support, or even do covert missions, whatever it involves, for the love of country and ethno-religion. So had provided such information to the DCS by the mid-1970s on a non-clandestine basis, so unhidden. So on an out-in-the-open basis. And that such acts of cooperation should not be confused with an actual agency relationship. They're just helping us out, Goy, that's all. They're just good citizens. So in popular culture, maybe this is interesting, Tommy Lee Jones portrayed Shaw in Oliver Stone's 1991 film JFK. Well, as I say, if I haven't watched that movie properly ever, I don't think. I've seen bits and bobs of it when it's been on TV, and I don't think I've sat through the whole thing. I'm going to have to watch it properly. But maybe it's good that I don't watch it properly before I finish reading the book. I kind of think I don't want it to affect my interpretation of the book by Michael Collins Piper, Final Judgment. Anyway, he was nominated, but maybe I should, I don't know, I'll think about it. What do you reckon? He was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for the role. Right, so that's it. I've been going, I think this has only been about an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes, so I might leave it at that. Relatively short and sweet. No, I can't call it short and sweet, but not too long for a live stream. So Wobbly Boost there, he says, in the end, all intel agencies are the KOM's bitch. Lol. So, I'm trying to think, KOM? Anyway, I said Mossad. Kingdom of Mossad? Feeling pretty stupid now that I don't know the acronym. But anyway, probably best. Maybe it's best that you don't type the full thing into the comments. I appreciate everybody who's listened live or anybody who listens on the playback. And I did intend, as I said, to do many more live streams reading from the Final Judgment book by Michael Collins Piper. I will continue to do it. I may not be able to put them all out or feel brave enough to put them all out on YouTube because, I mean, it pretty much says the J word all the time. Knights of Malta. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, so you reckon it's the Knights of Malta at the top of everything. All right, well, maybe. So, and there's user. Is that A? Maybe that's A from Australia. Hi, hello, and hi to A from Australia. So, yeah, watch out for more and follow me on Odyssey and on Rumble as well, where I will probably put more up, or maybe I'll put stuff up first there. And I might also do sometimes just live streams that are exclusive there as well. Just if I feel like that they're a bit too much for YouTube, or maybe not my own work on YouTube. Sorry, that I wouldn't put it on YouTube. So, follow me on Odyssey and on Rumble. I do have still an X account called Extrapolate Now. I'm at Extrapolate Now on X. I did have Extrapolations on X, but I don't know if somebody targeted me or mass reported me, or if a new algorithm came in and scanned over my posts or something and didn't like it. But it's even worse than YouTube as to why they ban you or suspend you permanently, right? I think I'm suspended, maybe permanently, but certainly suspended with, I don't know what chance I might have of getting it back, extrapolations as I had it on X, because it just says they're on closer inspection or on close inspection, they carefully examined my account and they considered that I engaged in inauthentic behavior, whatever the hell that is. And they never point to a post you made or a video you made or uploaded or a live stream you're in where you said something, or if there was your byline or a picture in your tag or your banner, anything. They never say what it is you've done. Well, at least a lot of the times they don't. So I couldn't tell you what I did, or if somebody just targeted me or whatever, but that's it. Anyway, so extrapolations for now anyway, suspended, unavailable on X. But I do still have extrapolate now on X if you want to follow me there. And I'm sometimes in streams. I used to do a lot more streams. Kind of a bit jaded of them now. I do think the quality of conversation has gone down a lot. And I think that's a function of just the way things are as well. I think, people might get a bit sort of stir crazy. Although they're still useful because, you can say a lot in spaces without being censored. But YouTube seems to be allowing a lot more now. Like, I think we can talk about, certain things like injections and, potential pandemics and whatnot. But, they're going to shut it down if you're talking too much truth. So, anyway. It's just good to follow me on other platforms and we can, keep it together if and when another thing does happen. Because, look, nobody has been arrested, let alone tried and charged and punished for the convids. So they can and will do it again whenever. And I'm pretty much braced for something to happen before Christmas, right? But who knows? I just think something is imminent. I've no particular reason to know why. But it's just been sort of eerily quiet for a little while since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which I think is a future echo of the assassination of JFK. So as I say, I'll leave it at that. Thanks to everybody for listening, and listen out for other stuff in the near future, if not just this week. And A says, yeah, everyone forgot about Rona, yet dropping like flies. Yeah, and it's hard to know what to attribute to that, Just could be general unhealthiness. Can't say for sure that it's to do with injections that they took, but it might be. Who knows? But yeah, it's kind of something that happened 5 years ago. We haven't forgotten about it. I certainly haven't. But it doesn't get discussed much anymore. And maybe that is because they always keep us on the merry-go-round with a new thing, the latest happening. And the Charlie Kirk thing definitely was a big, big thing. And they did it the day before the anniversary of 9/11 this year, 2025. And I think it did overshadow our remembering of 9/11. I haven't forgotten that, not in the slightest. It's still in my current events type memory. And yet, it's quite a long time ago. I was a young man when that happened. I was 20-something young man. And now I'm maybe not fully old, but I'm getting there. And I'm starting to feel very old now. And I just don't know where all the time went. Life really does go by very quickly while you're making other plans. And the older I get, the shorter I realize life is. All right, I better leave it at that. Otherwise, I'll keep rambling on. Cheers for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.